Welcome back, everyone! This is the last lab demo for the year and it'll feature Bake Shop. I thought it'd be fun to make some whoopie pies to celebrate making it through the semester. This recipe requires two major parts in making whoopie pies, the cake and the filling. It's important to make the cakes first so that they have time to cool as you work on making the filling. Normally the filling calls for shortening, but I'll be using butter as a modification and I'll explain why. Shortening is useful for fillings such as whoopie pies because it undergoes hydrogenation, similar to peanut butter that doesn't require you to stir together, like Jif and Skippy. Now, hydrogenation produces some trans fats, but in a baker's perspective, it doesn't require refrigeration and doesn't melt as easily, therefore making it easier to work with and be more shelf-stable. Shortening can also be in the form of high-ratio shortening, meaning it contains emulsifiers that make it easier for it to hold sugar and liquid for filling. High-ratio shortening is also more heat-stable. So you may have seen whoopie pies at convenience stores sitting at room temp because they're made to be that way. My store doesn't sell high-ratio shortening such as the SweetX brand, and a lot of shortening was out of stock, so I substituted it with butter. Because it's made with butter, it should be refrigerated and know that it won't last as long. But that's okay, because it means I get to eat all the whoopie pies. I'd also like to mention that the cocoa powder should be Dutch processed as written in the recipe. This means the cocoa powder has been treated with an alkaline solution which neutralizes the naturally acidic cocoa powder. This is extremely important because baking soda is called for, which is a base. If regular cocoa powder was used, the acid and base would react and we wouldn't want that right away. Instead, Dutch processed cocoa powder will prevent that reaction, but baking soda will later react when combined with buttermilk, which is acidic, at a more timely manner. Furthermore, Dutch processed cocoa versus regular cocoa powder is darker in appearance, more milder in flavor, and it's easy to combine with liquids. Now, I also have vanilla extract, peppermint extract, a minuella orange, and some food coloring to add variation to my filling later. The last thing I want to point out is that AP, or all-purpose flour, is used. You may have seen different flours, such as cake flour, pastry flour, AP flour, whole wheat white flour, bread flour, and it goes on and on and on. The thing is, always remember to follow your recipe because these special flours differ in protein content and work differently. A lot of times recipes are tested over and over, so whatever it calls for, you should be following that recipe. Now, enough about the ingredients, let's move on. As always, preheat your oven. Follow up by preparing your sheet pans before you start baking. I sprayed the pans before laying parchment paper down because it helps the paper to stick better and not move around when I later drop my cake batter. Then I sprayed it on top so that the cakes won't stick to the paper. Moving on, I'll mix all my dry ingredients together because again, we don't want a chemical reaction just yet between the dry and the wet ingredients like the baking soda and the buttermilk. This is often what prepackaged cake mixes are, a mixture of dry ingredients, and then you add the wet ingredients at home. Give it a good whisk to thoroughly incorporate it all. Next is the wet ingredients. Always shake up the buttermilk real good before using it. Now, no, I didn't add my egg here in this step, but it'll be added later. For this recipe, I'll be using a standing mixer. Now, using a standing mixer may seem like cheating compared to mixing it all by hand, but actually, using a mixer will give you better results and be more consistent with your product because you can control the time and speed better. It'll also thoroughly mix your ingredients a lot more than you would by hand and saves you a lot of effort. For reference, my mixer can hold up to 6 quarts. Starting with the cake batter, creaming sugar and butter is the first step. This doesn't require a specific time for mixing, but just make sure that it's light and fluffy so that the sugar granules are evenly distributed. Always scrape down the sides of your bowl. If not, unmixed residue will get into your batter, and when it cooks off, you'll taste a clump of sugary butter. Plus, you don't want an uneven color in your finished product. Next, I'll add the egg in so that it gets evenly distributed. If it were added in with the buttermilk, the acidity will cause it to curdle and denature, which is not desirable. After evenly mixed, alternate wet and dry ingredients in batches. Start and end with the dry mixture. Alternating helps with even mixing and to not overwhelm the batter to be too liquidy or too dry. Again, scrape the side of your bowl and paddle attachment. I don't want any flour clumps in my cakes. If you remember anything from this demo, it's to always scrape the side of your mixing bowl. To shape the cakes, I use a quarter measuring cup and place the batter on the parchment, 2 inches away from each other. To help with the stickiness, I sprayed the inside of the measuring cup and the spoon with cooking spray. It also helps to smooth out the top of the batter with the spoon already greased up. After 11 to 13 minutes, you want to see the cakes spring or puff back up when you press softly down on them. To test the inside, insert a clean toothpick in the deepest part of the largest cake and it should come out clean. If it comes out wet with the batter, continue baking it off longer. Be careful not to burn them. Transferring the cakes to a wire rack helps the airflow to get underneath the cakes, which allows them to cool faster and not become soggy from sitting on a solid surface. As my cakes are cooling, I will start to make the filling by again creaming shortening, or in this case more butter, and sugar together. Powdered sugar is the same as granulated sugar, but just more refined into smaller particles. You can see that the mixture is still dry and crumbly. Remember to keep scraping the sides of the bowl. By adding in only a quarter cup of water, it comes together and is similar to frosting. The thickness or thinness of your frosting depends on the water and sugar ratio. Because whoopie pie fillings are more voluminous and sturdy, using less water is better. To make different flavored fillings, I remove some of the big mixture into smaller separate bowls. For an orange flavor, I zest the orange because the skin is where a lot of good flavor lies. The outermost surface is what you want. Keep going deeper and it'll start to become bitter, so be sure to rotate the citrus. I also want to add in a little bit of juice from the orange for more flavor. Just be sure not to add too much because too much liquid will cause the filling to be too runny. Now to make it more attractive, I create an orange color with the food dye. You know what they say, you eat with your eyes first. My next flavor variation will be peppermint, so I add in half a teaspoon of extract and some green dye. When using dye, a little bit goes a long way, so it's better to add less than what you think you need, and then continue adding more if necessary. Now I didn't show in this video, but I added vanilla extract to the big mixing bowl as a full teaspoon because there was more mixture. I didn't add any dye because the creamy white appearance is what I want for a vanilla flavor. These are just a few variety of piping tips of different sizes and shapes that you can easily buy at a craft store or a kitchen store. You want to think about the context of what your filling is for. Because my cakes are decent in size, I want to select a larger tip to pipe out my filling. I also have a piping bag and I'll show you how to prepare it. For the purposes of this demo, I chose different shape tips for my fillings. Now check to make sure your cake is completely cooled off or it will melt because the butter melts at the body's temperature of 98 degrees Fahrenheit. First, drop your piping tip into an empty bag. Then make a C shape with one hand and push open part of the bag down over that hand. Now you've created a larger opening to fill the bag with a filling. Fill a good amount in, but leave some room at the top, so when you fold the bag back up, you can squeeze the filling down. You'll notice the filling is stuck because there's no air pressure to push it down. To release this, cut open the tip slightly above the end of the piping tip because if you cut directly below it, it'll leave traces of untrimmed plastic on the filling design. Use scissors to create a slit in the plastic and pull it off. Squeeze the rest of the filling down and twist the top. Now it's ready to go. Select two cakes that are about an equal size and shape. Now to pipe, create an L shape with one hand and place it at the top to hold the twisted part of the bag. That will be the guiding hand. With the other hand, grip it firmly around the bottom and that will be the squeezing hand. So when you pipe, make sure the bag is directly vertical and not at an angle with your product. I squeeze the filling out with the bottom hand and make a circular motion with the top hand. Start from the center and work your way out. It would also help if your cake didn't move around as much. I'll do the same process with the orange filling and the peppermint filling. Drop the tip in, make a C shape with your hand, fold the bag over, add the filling, twist the top, cut the bottom, and squeeze it down. Another point is to remember that my filling is used with butter. If I keep holding onto the filled bag for too long, the heat from my hands will start to melt the filling. Also, keep your work environment cool. I waited for my kitchen to cool down after using the oven so my frosting wouldn't melt. This is also why bakers and pastry chefs work early in the morning when the kitchen is cooler before other chefs start using the stoves and ovens throughout the day, which increase the environment temperature. Whew, we finally made it to the end. Pretty easy, right? Go give it a try, experiment with different flavors for the filling, and be that awesome party host with a table full of countless homemade whoopie pies. I hope you enjoyed Ben and mine's lab demos. Thanks for watching!